My only question is if there was anyone else interested. I know not everybody got to chime in on the email strand, so want to
Good
give
call.
space if there was someone else who was interested in presiding.
Good call. Is there anyone else who's interested in presiding tonight? Okay. So thank you, Vanessa. Barbara has voted yes. Mike?
Yes.
Richard?
Yes.
Tony?
Yeah. Yes.
Marcia?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
And Peter?
Yes.
Okay, looks like it's unanimous. Barbara, thank you. So you have the agenda, so if you don't mind taking over at this point, that'd be great. Thank you.
You're muted, Barbara.
Okay, we have to approve the minutes of the last meeting. We need a motion. And Jenna, I think Marcia, I know wasn't there, and there was one other individual that would have to.
It was Kathy, but she's absent for this meeting as well.
Okay. So we need a motion to accept.
I'll make a motion.
The second.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Now, do we have the
Do we
six?
have enough?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 1 abstention. So that.
Correct.
So we don't have enough.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes, we have 6.
Oh, okay.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Correct. Okay, motion passes 6-0 with 1 abstention from Marcia. Now a very happy occasion to extend the oath of office to Phil. Do you have that?
Yes, I do. Sorry, I was jotting it down since I'm taking care of that as well here.
Right.
Okay. I do solemnly affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New York, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of library trustee according to the best of my ability.
Thank you so much, Phil. We really appreciate you doing this. Thank you.
Anytime.
Welcome back.
Luann, any public input?
Yes, I have 4 comments to read for public input tonight for the beginning session. I would like to just preface this by saying these were comment cards that we had instituted in the lobby, and they checked the box indicating they would like this to be read as public comment. And I also would like to just point out that we generally have received much more positive input from the public than any negative. And with that, I will read these. First one says, why the 30-minute limit? Schenectady Public Library, Colony Town Library, Bethlehem Public Library, and Clifton Park Half Moon Library have no restrictions on allowing patrons to sit in the library. Second one says, underwhelmed. Where are the chairs? Not welcoming at all. $9 million waste. Third one says, I hate this building, too institutional and big. Old one was fine. And the last one says, past the big welcome sign, clearly you do not want visitors, with limit your visit to 30 minutes signs, no chairs, tape on seats, very unwelcoming. We'll go to other libraries, Bookhouse, and Barnes & Noble instead. Depressing and disappointing. And that's all I have.
Hey, not the happiest of notes, but it is what it is, correct?
Right. And I really just wanted to emphasize that we do receive much more positive. It's just that these were designated as public comment, and the positive ones generally don't seem to be. So there's that.
Thank
So
you.
Thank you.
Megan, can you give us the construction update?
I had my hand raised, Barb, on the public comment.
Sorry, I didn't see that. Sorry, Vanessa.
That's okay. That's okay. I was just wondering if those comment cards that were designated as being read as public comment were signed. You didn't indicate any names, and I know previously we discussed not reading comments that weren't signed.
No, none of these have names attached to them.
Okay, so I'll just ask in the future if we could be consistent with that, if that is in fact our policy.
Well, I did review the public comment policy, and it does not state that a name has to be attached to it.
Okay, Richard? Oh, you're muted, Richard.
My strong recollection was last time we said we were going to eliminate the 30-minute limit. And we were going to take the pieces of paper from the tables where it said that there was a 30-minute limit. So I think by not doing that, we've created some bad will.
That's my recollection as well, Richard.
So my recollection is a little different. I don't think we took any formal position on that, and it was understood that it was in the library administration's discretion on how to handle that. I know I and some other people had expressed a preference or weren't necessarily happy with the 30-minute limit, but I don't think the board ever directed the library to remove that or take any action. I think it was left within the
Let me
discretion.
look at the minutes.
Hey, Tim, do you want to comment? Because things have changed a little bit since those comment cards were out.
Sure, I would just say two things. I think Mike has the more correct recollection. And also, we have put out quite a few chairs, and they're being used a little bit. You know, not that much, but you know, you typically will see 3 or 4 people seated throughout the library. And this evening, for example, when I went out to grab a sandwich at 4:30, there were like 25 cars in the parking lot. So it was a nice sign. You know, it's a recommendation. It's not an order that your visit should be less than 30 minutes.
Okay, any other comments?
I would just say that doesn't sound like a recommendation. When I'm a member of the public and I see that sign, there's nothing on there that says, at your discretion, observe the 30-minute limit.
Well, I certainly can support changing the wording and making it more softening it. I don't know if that's a way we could describe that, but I can take care of that if that's what you folks would like me to do.
Tim, do we have to have the signs there at all, considering that we're not being overpopulated?
I wouldn't say we have to have them, no.
Would the board agree to allow him to take the signs down? Any objections?
Can I just, I mean, I don't, if we're just allowing him, those 30-minute signs, we discussed this last time, they're not something that's dictated by our pandemic policies. So the library is free to, you know, do that or not. I mean, if we wanted to direct him to take them down, that's one thing, but just to allow him, he already has that ability, and we don't have to vote on that.
Okay. Vanessa, did you have your hand up?
I was just agreeing with Mike. I think we can offer our feedback and our request, but he already has the discretion. So I don't think this is an action that we need to take.
Okay. Are we ready for Megan? Okay, Megan. And don't worry about the little ones in the background. They're fun to see.
Air spell. I'm trying to write a Y backwards for him. I'm going to screw him up for school tomorrow. Sorry for my extra accessories.
No problem.
Their dad's still at work. He's an architect as well, so it's battling schedules. So I will share my screen. I don't have a substantial update, but I do have one. I'm also presenting our building committee or the design steering committee update as well, because Kathy is abroad, living her best life, hopefully, as it seems. So as you know, construction is complete. We have a few outstanding punch list items remaining with the contractors. In fact, today, the mechanical contractor was on site for most of the morning going over items that were identified during the commissioning process and the punch list process. So a lot of those system concerns or coordination items have been addressed. So they're nearing completion and close out of their contract, as are most of the other contractors as well. Financially, we continue to just work on closing out expenditures, so we remain under budget. Everything is remaining in line as with previous months. And then if no one takes exception, since this is my construction or the project update, I'll roll into the design steering committee update because that sort of relates to things that we talked about as well. I can't see if anybody's raising their hand or taking exception, so I'm just going to keep talking.
I have one question. I don't know
Yes, sir.
where exactly it fits in. Do we have a do we have any update, or do we know when the automated material sorting machine, when that's going to be in place?
Tim, I defer to you. I believe it's any day now.
It's actually we have been installing for the last 2 days.
Oh,
I
good.
don't know, two things, Mike, whether all components are in-house yet, and regardless of that, I mean, if they are all in-house yet, whether they've all been installed. I know training is scheduled for early next week, so Monday, I believe, so.
Okay, good to hear that that's underway.
If you're out and about and you see a giant piece of plywood box, kind of like a sarcophagus outside the library, that's a container that some of it came in.
Go ahead, Megan. I don't see any hands up.
All right. So we've had two design.
Richard had his hand up.
My hand was up.
Oh, I'm
Sorry.
sorry, Richard. I can't see you on my screen. Sorry. Just speak.
I'm hard to miss, especially with the beard. Megan, I just wanted to ask updates on furniture and computers, public computers.
We still have a few outstanding pieces that are due in. Everything but one is due in by mid-December. One of the miniature, for lack of a better word, the petite size lounge chairs for the children's room.
Yep.
And it's matching chair and a half that was supposed to be for a parent-child to sit together. For some reason, those were extremely delayed, but they are scheduled to ship in early January. And that's the last piece that's outstanding. There's a few other things that are coming in the next few weeks. And Tim, I'll let you speak to the computers. I'm not sure what those are doing for lead time right now.
Well, Megan, I don't know a better way to say it other than that I think what we're waiting for more is electricity in the area where the computers belong. I do not know the status of the actual physical computers, whether some are in-house yet or not.
Adding the power for the second computer table is scheduled for next week, I believe. So we should be getting those online very soon. Then if your computers are in-house as well.
I think, not to go out of turn, but I think that was, apologies for being a little confused with everything that's going on. I believe that the status of the public computers was discussed a bit in the COVID committee meeting as well. But I am not positive at this point. I missed half of that meeting due to a child medical appointment.
So the only thing pertinent to the availability of the computers was that the electrical work was not yet complete to open that service.
So I just got a text from Sean. The PCs should be shipped the first week of December.
Great. So then hopefully we can get everything coordinated and online at the same time.
I know that I just got an email with the services that are online and the services that are not yet online. Could we emphasize to the public the expected deployment of some of these things? Because we said October for the computers, I know. If it's going to be December, that's a pretty big change.
We can do that. The only danger is, if they don't come. We had signs at the computer tables when we first opened that said mid-October, and now they just say delayed due to worldwide chip shortages. Yes, we can say that, say it in a way that it mentions December but doesn't promise December. We currently expect them to come in early December, something like that.
Just a suggestion, however you decide to word it, or if you decide to do it.
All right, at our design steering committee meetings, or BRMA sent out proposal requests to 3 contractors to provide a new concrete slab for the future shed. Lou would like to upgrade or upsize the current shed so that there's more space for exterior maintenance equipment and other storage needs. So we received 3 proposals. The lowest bidder that could also meet the timeline was Bass Hatfield, and their proposal was $27,741. And they are scheduled to deliver equipment to the site tomorrow and begin work on Monday. And assuming that the weather and everything works as planned, the concrete will be poured on Wednesday. And the weather looks great for the end of the week for curing time. So that's working.
Megan, how many square feet is the shed that concrete slab for almost $28,000?
It's expensive when you think about it like that. It's 20 by 24. The caveat is that we had to do it prevailing wage rates. So it's much more expensive than your typical at-home project.
Wow.
I will just add that the current shed, we tried to sell or give to other libraries. That didn't work out. And then we found a taker to take it for free, and it will be used at Farnsworth Middle School. So we're trying desperately to get it moved tomorrow or perhaps over the weekend so that it's out of the way for the contractor on Monday.
Also, just for reference, we originally went to our GC, Betty and Krang, and asked them to give us a change order proposal for the slab, knowing that they were already on site and doing other work. And they never formalized their proposal, but they said it would be at least $40,000. So that's why we went out and solicited new bids from other contractors. And so this came in much more favorably and in the range that Turner was estimating it would cost. So these numbers felt right in line with where Turner wanted to see them. We also approved 2 change orders for electrical work. We had 3 locations in the collection areas that needed some supplemental lighting. So we added those at a cost of $9,824. And then we noted that similarly, there's some spots where we reused the existing recessed cans and they do not put out the same quality and level of lighting. So we've got some dark spaces like in the back of house hallways or the hallway to the restroom and the ceiling area by the curved glass window, the existing plaza area. So we thought, being under budget, we should upgrade those light fixtures as well. So everything is from the same generation, has the same technology and controls, and just a better quality of lighting throughout the building. So now everything's been updated or will be updated. The cost for that change order was $26,424. That was replacing about 70 recessed cans that were still scattered in different spots throughout the building. We also have been reviewing some additional landscaping. We were not able to approve this at our last committee meeting because there was not a quorum, but perhaps if the board is agreeable, we can approve it now so we can actually authorize the work to be done, or some of it to be done this fall, and some may have to wait till the spring. But we have a proposal from Cloverleaf Nurseries, who was the subcontractor to our GC. And this is a direct proposal from them, as our GC wants to close out their contract and not be involved anymore, which is fair. But just to give you the background of why we went to them specifically. So this proposal includes providing an arborvitae border at the east and west property lines, residential property lines, so that we're acting as a good neighbor so that headlights aren't shining into the adjacent neighboring houses and yards. It also includes a green paver system by the fire department connection at the corner of the building so that the firemen don't have to worry about mud or ice if they need to get to that fire department sprinkler, or this is the sprinkler room, get to the water connection if they needed to attach a hose for fire suppression. It also involves or includes some ornamental trees along Western Ave to just create some more visual interest, and some ornamental trees at the south end of the new lot to disguise some of the roof and unattractive portions of our addition, since we're higher than a grade level down here. And then we also are going to add some ornamental grasses and daylilies at the end of the central island to give a little more softness. So this proposal was reviewed by the committee. We actually did some reductions. So the value is $16,645. And Barbara has a question. And Richard has a comment.
Yes, we've been trying to connect, but unsuccessfully. In that central island, I know our maintenance people said that when we had trees in our former sort of island area, they did not do well. Is it possible to put up sort of like flower boxes or raised beds on that little island that you would hide some of the wiring that you see from the road? All you see are the sticks from the handicap thing and the 4-hour charging stations. And it almost looks like a gas station instead of a beautiful entryway as was originally described to us, that you would see the library from the road. Is anything like that possible? Then the flower boxes, you could change them in the summer and then in the fall, to put in your more fall plants, or, some, I don't know, taller grasses or whatever to disguise some of those sticks.
Yeah, let me look into it. I'm also, maybe we need like a little pergola or something like that that would sort of integrate some of those vertical ugly elements.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Rubin?
I would like to move acceptance of this proposal, and I'd also like to approve it for up to $19,000, pending Megan's discretion on making some changes to this in line with Barbara's suggestion.
Would that be high enough, Megan? Or should you go for 20?
Maybe 20 to be safe.
Then I'm happy to make it 20,000.
You had also mentioned at one point some kind of a covered canopy, or I don't know, is that part of your thinking still or not?
It is. I'm trying to get some more information about the sail type awnings and how compact they are to put them away to store them over the winter. I like those tensile sheets that look like they're stretched between vertical posts. That way they could be taken down in the winter or off season and stored so that they have a longer lifespan. But Lou had a concern about storage and maintenance and such. So I'm trying to get a little more information on that. But I'd like to see using some of those sail awnings over the two plazas that face the front of the building.
Thank you. We have a motion from Richard to accept the design committee's recommendations up to $20,000, and it needs a second.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, it passes. What? We have 8-0. Continue, Megan.
All right.
Megan, could I just ask that if you do alter this, that you let us know by?
Of course.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And then the other topic to review that we just discussed yesterday or 2 days ago at our committee meeting was the potential replacement of the chiller, or the technical term is the evaporative cooler. I believe earlier this year we had touched on it briefly as something the committee was considering replacing at this time because we have come in under budget. But the committee, after doing some discussion and talking about it at different meetings, decided that knowing that it had another 2 to 4 years of lifespan anticipated from the service technicians, that they thought it would be prudent to wait, get the last 2 to 4 years, out of the unit, and hopefully in 2 to 4 years have even better technology for longevity and maintenance. As you can see in this photo, there's some corrosion. The service technicians have told Tim and Lou that the actual motor and fan are not moving because of the corrosion on it, and that likely to get it going in time for the next cooling season, you're going to have some substantial repairs or replacement pieces to contend with. So I reached out to our mechanical engineer, and they anticipate to replace the unit as is, it would be approximately $80,000. So I also then reached out to the facilities planning office at New York's State Education Department. That is the facility that, or the institution that issues the building permits for our projects. I asked them if this replacement or upgrade to the evaporative cooler system could be completed under this current project rather than go through the full submission process. Your project manager said yes, that this project could be included in the current building project, and that they could expedite review and approval if it was submitted as an addendum to our current open project and project number. The one caveat that they did add was that this project must be bid separately as a new contract, so it needs to be publicly bid. It cannot be added to the mechanical contractor's current contract as a change order. So with that being said, that sort of means that the design team, myself, the mechanical and electrical engineers, need to put together a set of construction documents, which include, the specifications for a new evaporative cooler and all of the elements that go along with it, the electrical, the control, so that it's part of Lou's building management system, so that he can control, or the maintenance staff can control and alter the systems in-house or remotely, but with the ease of a computer rather than going around to individual units. This also means that the technical drawings and specifications for the SED addendum submission. And although I'm still actively working for you, this is sort of, going back to the beginning in terms of projects, because this is a new scope and it needs to be bid separately. So we need to create some new documents, that front end that we refer to, that has the contract information, all the administrative requirements. We need to draft a new set of those. So there's some work on my end that would need to be done for this. And then following the review at SED, we'll put together the bid documents and put it out to bid. We will also then receive and review the bids, give you a letter of recommendation, and then assuming that the board accepts our recommendation and the low bidder, we'll put together the contract for the new mechanical work and move forward with all the contract administration and the construction and oversight with submittals, payment applications, change order proposals, and such. So working with our engineer, we put together a fee of $18,700 for those services. We wanted to present that to the board tonight to see if you wanted to move ahead with placing the evaporative cooler and using Butler Allen Mace. Mr. Rubin, I see your hand up. I don't know if anybody else has.
I think this is for you, Megan and Tim. Right after the design committee meeting, I thought of a question, and it might be a dumb question, but it seems like we're incurring a lot of expenses because we're including this in the overall project. If we took it out of the project, we'd be subject to less paperwork, administrative burden, and the bid process might be easier. My question is, are those assertions valid? And would we have money to pay for this outside of the renovation project, if they are?
So Megan, if you don't mind, I'll start and then you can correct me if I get anything wrong. Respectfully, I believe the exact opposite is true. The 18,700 removes significant paperwork and bidding burdens from my office. We do not, to my knowledge, have $60,000 to $80,000 in our budget that we can just assign to this prior to the spring when we need air conditioning.
Yeah, I didn't intend to shift the responsibility. I just thought some of it would go away if we didn't have to comply with SED requirements. But if we don't have the money, Tim, it's a moot issue. So thank you for the answer.
Well, that's moot, but you always have to comply with SED requirements if you're an SED library regardless. So,
Even the public bidding and everything.
sure, yep.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
So,
And if I remember correctly from our discussion, I think it's important for the rest of the board members to know that there was some implication for timeline if this were to be bid on outside of this project. Do I remember that correctly, Megan?
Yes, that using, well, not, I'm not trying to say this in any way to stack the deck in my favor or, you know, to manipulate anything.
Well, I've asked the question, so I think you're okay.
I don't, we submitted this original project to SED, so we are listed as your project architects and engineers. So we can add this scope if we're signing off on it, if we are the engineers and architects stamping these new drawings. If you wanted to use a different firm, which you are welcome to do this project, because it can be done distinctly and separately, you would then need to submit for a new project number at SED and go through the submission process, which has, as you may remember from a few years back, for those of you who were on the board then, SED has a backlog of projects always, so it's weeks to months that it takes to review the documents and then get comments back and then receive your building permit. So using the addendum process, we don't have to go into the queue. We get to go right to the front of the line and have the documents reviewed.
Megan, can I throw out a observation that I thought you said in the design steering committee meeting when the board members at the meeting asked you about the fee of 18,700? I believe you said that 12 or 13 of that would end up going to mechanical engineers and not to Butler, Rowland and Mays. So I think you might be muted. But...
Oh, yes, that was correct.
Okay. So it's not just like all going to Butler, Rowland and Mays.
We don't usually get a lot of the glamour. Richard, did you have your hand up? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, just on behalf of the Design Steering Committee, given the clarifications tonight, I'd like to propose that we go ahead and engage BRMA for the estimated 18,700.
I have a silly question. Did we say we can't afford to do this?
No, we can't afford to do it outside of the construction project.
Ah, so the $80,000 would be already in the budget?
We can use the monies that we haven't assigned from our budget for this expenditure. We're under budget, so we can assign the $80,000 to that and then just be less under budget.
So
Also,
it would be folded into the construction budget. Oh,
correct.
I misunderstood the comment about we didn't have the money.
The
Okay,
the referendum.
because I was wondering why we were going forward if we couldn't afford to do it. So,
It would be a hardship for the operating budget to.
yeah, for the operating budget. Okay, thank you for the clarification.
And also, as another clarification, in our budget, I'm just going to scroll. I talk a lot and have a lot of slides, more than I realized. In our project soft costs, we had allocated a line item for additional design services because things come up, like we had the boiler replacement that was a few $1,000s of design service fees. This also would be a similar billable expense towards that line item. So you have money already available in the budget for the BRMA fee. So that's already accounted for.
Do you anticipate, can you, I know you don't have a crystal ball, but we have in the budget enough to pay for your fee and the $80,000 if that's what the cost is after public bidding. Can you anticipate what else we might be expecting so that we still come in under budget? Because, you know, these odds and ends add up.
That's true. I think we're nearing the end of the odds and ends. Like we've already done that additional lighting. We've identified some other maintenance things that need to be done. Site furniture and those awnings or canopies are probably the last big thing, unless I'm forgetting anything else. Tim,
So
or-
after we expended $80,000 for the chiller, what would we have left so we can still say we're under budget? Because we've been saying that since this project started. And, you know, if it's becoming a point where it's not going to be true, I'd like to know that.
Oh, it's still true. Hold on, let me.
I think we had about a $500,000 available at the bottom line. So if we're talking about 100,000 for the fees and the chiller, that still puts us at 400
Correct.
Okay,
ballpark.
thanks, Bill.
Any other comments? We need a second to Richard's motion.
Could I get the motion again so I could write that down properly, please?
It's to approve an expenditure to Butler Rowland Mays for $18,700 for work regarding the replacement of the chiller.
I think just, do we also want to include in that that's just the work, but I think the scope of our project doesn't include the purchase of the chiller, like
No,
that.
they're going to come back to us with a recommendation.
I see. Okay,
So
It has to
will
be publicly bid.
Yeah, the design or the design.
right, we have to decide we want to purchase it to bid it.
So it would be to develop bid documents for replacing the chiller or the evaporative cooler.
That's included in your fee. Right?
Yes.
You're going to take it through the bid process,
I'm
yes?
gonna take it from beginning to end. So I'm going to put together the documents, get it through SED, publicly bid it, open up the bids, and then do all of the administration to make sure that everything gets done properly, and then close out the project at SED with the library.
Okay, yeah. And so you would submit your recommendation once the bids are in to the board for
Correct.
approval. Thank you.
Can we?
Second the motion.
Okay, Phil just second the motion. Any other comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Good, okay, we're all set there. Anything else, Megan?
That was everything for me, unless there's any other questions for the design steering committee in general, or I can just mute my cell phone. You can wait till you get to that point in your agenda.
No, I think we're there. So if they will free you up to enjoy your family, I think that would be great. Any further questions for Megan? If not, thank you so much. You've been a great source of information, and we really appreciate that you're always being available. Thank you, Megan.
My pleasure. Thank you, guys.
See you later. Okay, the next thing on the agenda is the personnel action. I don't seem to have it in my packet here. So Tim, if you want to read,
Sure.
the hires and fires, so to speak.
Yeah,
ahead.
so I don't know if we do them, do we need to do them one at a time, or do I read all four and then you vote on them?
Well, normally we go into an executive session and hear your story about each of the things, but if it's just mundane, usual hire type of thing, then I think if you do it one at a time so that it can be recorded properly, I think
Sure.
it'd be easier that way for Phil.
Okay, and Phil, we do have this on paper too. If you don't have it, we can email it to you. To approve the appointment of Brianna Van Nordstrand, part-time custodial worker in maintenance department, effective November 17th, 2021, with a pay rate of $14.57 per hour for 20 hours a week.
We need a motion to accept that appointment.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Good. Congratulations. Go ahead, go ahead.
And to approve the appointment of Martin Pohl, POHL, part-time librarian 1 in Programs and Services Department, effective December 1st, 2021, with a pay rate of $24.97 per hour for 12 to 18 hours per week.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, seeing none, 8-0 approved. Go ahead.
To approve the resignation of Gianna Fonti, part-time page in the Access Services Department, effective November 8th, 2021.
Again, make a
I'll make the
motion.
motion. I'll make the motion.
Makes the motion, second. Richard? Any comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any negatives, nays? Seeing none, we passes 8-0. Congratulations again.
Okay, and the last one is to approve the resignation of Ann Wemple Person, full-time librarian 1 in Programs and Services Department, effective January 4th, 2022.
I'll make the motion.
I need a second. Who's the second?
I'll second.
Okay, Marcia seconded it. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, it goes 8-0. And before we leave this one, I just want to thank Ann for her years, and I mean years of service to the community. She will be missed. Thank you.
I was going to do the same thing, so I'll just support your notion there, Barbara. Ann has been with the library for 14 years and is moving on. I'm not sure what yet, but she's been a wonderful part of our staff for many years. So thank you, Ann.
That's it, Tim?
Yep.
Oh, very good. Tony, we have the treasurer's report coming up next. If you could take the lead.
So I got an email from Tony just a few minutes before the board meeting started that he was detained while traveling. He thought that he would be here in time to give the report, and he is not going to be able to make it. He did suggest that I tell you folks a little bit about UHLS, but that would be in the UHLS committee report section. So I have a little note there. And then I'm not Tony. Tony has asked for permission to give the report on the financials for October at the December meeting. But I just want to add that when you look at the financials, you'll see a very large payout of around $250,000, and that's the annual payment to the New York State retirement system. And we always pay it early, which saves us, I guess it's 1%-ish. The payment is 250,000-ish, and the savings is about 24 or 2,500. So we pay it all up front instead of paying it quarterly or the other ways that they allow. So that's the one observation I would have about the financials at this point. And I'm not sure if you need a resolution to allow him to comment on October financials in December, but I'm not sure you have any choice. So
I don't think we need to, as long as, about the check register, though, I think that's something that we could do, the check register. I mean, it's all laid out for us.
that would be wonderful, because then we can, when Kathy comes in to sign the checks, they're actually authorized. And I can certainly answer questions about probably every check on the check register. And we also have David Gilliam with us. So if there are any questions, you can call for them, Barbara, and I think you're right. It should be voted on.
Right. Could I have a motion to accept the check register or to approve the check register? I don't see any hands. We need somebody to make a motion to do the check register. Marcia, and I need a second.
Second it.
Okay. Any questions for Tim? Okay, all those in favor of the check register?
Aye.
Okay, I see 8-0. It passes. Thank you so much, Tim. Now we go to the director and department head reports. Again, we have copies of all the reports. Tim, if you want to add anything to what you've already written, that would be fine. And if any of you folks have questions, either to Tim or about anything that's in the report, now's the time to speak up. Thank you.
Let me give you 3 or 4 minutes worth of just stuff, highlights and so forth. We do, typically these reports are about the past, but I do want to mention there's a blood drive at the library on Tuesday, November 23rd. And because the Helderberg room construction was not going to be finished in time, we have to do that in the Normanskill and Westbrook rooms. So just want to give credit to David Minkler of the maintenance department, who spent all day moving stuff out of those rooms, and then we'll get them cleaned over the weekend for the Red Cross. Have to point out the 40% open rate for emails that Luann is getting. It's just an amazing number, roughly twice what we can expect. Circulation, of course, is up very far over this time last year because we're open. Curbside note is currently less than 1% of our transactions. It might go up a little bit as the weather gets colder, and unfortunately, if today's any example, the COVID numbers getting worse. The people who use it are very dedicated to it, and I'm glad we're still able to offer that service. Interesting to note that 58% of all the transactions in October were done inside on the self-check machines. 58 and then 42. So those are not normal numbers. Usually I would think more people would prefer to interact with a human than with a machine. So I suspect it's got something to do with COVID. The flu shot clinic was great, 77 vaccinations in 4 hours, 25 boxes of drugs taken back at the drug take back day, which was always managed by Ann Wempel-Person. Incidentally, it's a collaboration with the police department. So hopefully we will find another librarian who wants to pick that up. Maria mentions in her report the podcast that Kathleen Terrell, a librarian, does. And I just wanted to suggest that listening to the current one, as Maria mentions, is it's about the consumer health information service that the library provides. This is like a specialty credential within library science. So you take some extra training and learn how to be cutting edge with health information research. We have several librarians who have qualified to provide that service. And I think it's a painless way to learn about a service that the library offers that most of us are not front and center, keeping front of mind at all times. We added the Canopy video streaming service about a month ago, and we had 1,065 viewing sessions, which was great. Then I started playing with numbers in the various department heads' reports today. Between Hoopla and Overdrive, 9,000 items were checked out electronically last month. That's a rough number. The physical checkouts for last month, again, a rough number, were 14,000. So I just think it's really interesting to keep those numbers in mind. They're probably different right now because of COVID, but it's really a substantial part of the impact of the library is done virtually these days. Since we reopened September 28th, we've answered 1,925 reference questions. Approximately 1,600 of them were in person. So you see the effect of opening the library. It's a dramatic improvement in community engagement. And there were 9,200 separate individuals, some of them more than once, of course, who came through the doors in the month of October. While in general traffic has felt a little bit slow, the library is larger than it used to be, and there's 36,000 people that live in Guilderland. So essentially 1/4 of the citizens of Guilderland have been in the library in October, per capita, that is. So that's my report.
To accept the director's report.
Come on, somebody's got to second that. Phil did. Okay, yep.
All those in favor?
Aye.
8-0, passes. Thank you, Tim.
Nervous for a second there, but hey.
We now go to committee reports. And Mike, you're head of audit and finance, and you can take audit first and then move on to finance.
So I was told as of Monday this week that we're expecting the audit report by the end of the week. So I'm hoping maybe tomorrow we'll get it. As soon as we do receive it, then I will schedule a meeting with the auditors and with the committee so that we can get their presentation on that. But from what I understand, any day now.
Okay.
And the finance committee has not met.
Okay, building and grounds, I'm in charge of that, and we haven't met, but the long range planning committee did have a nice seminar from an Upper Hudson employee who gave us a lot of good, cool tips, but stressed the fact that this is not something that you do in the course of a month. And if we were to have it done, say, by March or April, we would sort of be lucky. It includes contacting your community, getting focus groups, meetings with the staff, our own brainstorming. And so what the suggestion was is that at our December meeting, we simply approve our former long-range plan, although in a sense it's null and void because we have had the building project, but at least there would be something on file with the state, which is a state requirement. But the individual stressed that there is no way in the course of, you know, a month with the holidays and all, that a true good long-range plan can be formulated.
Barbara, can I comment too? Of course, I was in the meeting, and the other concept was that holding focus groups and community events is a little hard right now because of COVID in the meeting rooms. And basically, if we were to survey the community about what they were looking for in their library right now, it would not really be a long-range plan. It would be a very, very short-range plan where people talk about construction and COVID concerns. So, you know, hopefully we get a fresh start COVID-wise, and maybe get on this next year is the way I kind of remembered the meeting.
That is correct. Any questions from anybody? Okay, if not, we'll move on to cafe. Peter?
Proud to say we finally met. The one thing I'll apologize to everybody on the board here is I did not submit a report from the meeting, and Tim did in fact tell me I was supposed to do that, and I failed to do that, so I apologize to everybody. But what we did discuss was that there were 3 different organizations that were interested in a possible location at the library. Some of the concerns that they had was related to staffing, space, not the typical location that they would typically use. Also discussion about the rent and how that would work out. I also want to state too, just so everybody knows, so Tim was there, Kathy was there, I was there, Richard was unable to be there, but Richard did send an email with things that he thought should be mentioned, and so we appreciate that. Couple of big issues that we talked about was what do we do with the space, because nobody's taken us up on the RFP, and one of the suggestions was to maybe make it into an area where we have vending machines. Now, obviously that could be a good possibility, but one of the things that Tim informed us of was that our current vendor for the vending machines has said that we're not having enough foot traffic in the library for them to be willing to even provide those machines. And obviously that's related to the fact that COVID, you know, restrictions on the amount of people we're able to have in the library. And to be fair, there are just some people who are still hesitant to even come to the library at all. So these are some of the challenges that we're facing. One of the other things we talked about was the RFP, and was there too much in it? Should we simplify it? Were we asking too much? We discussed the fact that it was looking at a 3-year contract, and that might be too much. We talked about equipment. Should we pick up equipment costs, or how should that work? And we also got some information from Megan related to that. So currently right now, the suggestion, and Tim could correct me if he thinks I'm wrong or if I didn't share something that he feels is important, but again, the key is possibly putting out a new RFP that's simplified, less requirements from whoever was to come into that space, and also reach out to some local businesses that have cafes and see if maybe they possibly be interested. So a little more outreach on a personal level as opposed to just putting the RFP out. So Tim, is there anything that you wanted to add that you feel that I missed that we had discussed at the meeting?
I think that probably is the gist of it. Thanks, Peter. I would just add that, you know, that last thing that Peter was saying, that a little bit more personal outreach. I know some of you have done this, and I appreciate that. But if there's a coffee shop, a cafe, or a restaurant that you frequent, feel free to talk to the owner or the manager and suggest that that they get in touch with Peter or myself. And you know, I'm happy to show them the space. And we want to be very flexible and work something out to provide an amenity in the library. That's our goal, you know, as opposed to becoming a wealthy landlord. You know, so we're willing to work with people to make a vision happen that might be of one scale for the next year, and then as society opens back up, expand a little bit, kind of thing. One other thing I'd throw in there is that we do have, and it's at first going to sound unrelated, but it is potentially related. Since we've reopened, it's become clear, and I'm being a little bit facetious, but the public seems to be interested in the library concept of borrowing books and things on about an equal basis, that they're interested in giving us used books and buying used books. It is the most frequent question we receive: when our book sale is going to start again? Is there going to be a bookshop? And so when we are able to, I think we need to think creatively about possibly merging a book selling function with a coffee or snack function. So that I think we talked about that, Peter, right, at the cafe meeting?
Absolutely correct, yes.
Okay, so basically feel free to glad hand your friends who are in the food service business.
Tim, just real quickly, do you remember what the numbers were previously when things were really going before COVID hit us as hard as it did? What the numbers were on the book sales that were happening? Do you remember what I mean, they're pretty good numbers. I just can't remember the exact numbers.
So financially, we brought in about $25,000 to $30,000 a year is my kind of gut reaction. And then numerically, with a monthly book sale on a Saturday morning, we would have 200 people basically there, right when it started at 10 o'clock, which was essentially unsafe in our facilities. But we'd have several hundred, 400 come through in the course of a Saturday just to go to those book sales. So,
Yes.
Marcia?
Yeah, just a comment about the cafe. I spoke to about 4 or 5 local business owners. I even spoke with people at Price Chopper, and they all had the same comment. They don't have the staff. They don't even have enough people that work for the primary business. And so the thought of trying to expand to this library cafe was something that was not possible for them because of lack of personnel. So I'm not necessarily advocating this, but I have seen in certain circumstances that some form of honor system works, where there's a coffee machine or hot water and some pre-wrapped pastries or sandwiches, and it's worked pretty well. I still have faith in humankind, but if we can't get something going next time around, perhaps with a different RFP, because I don't think the problem's going to get better in terms of being able to staff it. Maybe that's a consideration we should think about as a group, or the committee should think about.
Okay.
that is in fact one way that Prestige Vending operates canteens, and we can call them back and see if we can sell them on that. 9,000 people in here last month is substantial, so maybe that's a step in the right direction.
Is that it, Peter?
Yes, that's it. Yep.
Oh, thank you so much for investigating all that stuff. The next 2 things are Narina Melita's baby, but she's away. Has she given you some information, Tim?
Yeah, so she did attend the foundation meeting, the last foundation meeting, as did I. And we, the majority of the meeting from the library's perspective anyway, was about potential things to fund. So I gave them all sorts of suggestions about things not currently in the budget that would enhance the building and the facility and so forth. And they said thank you, and they would consider them, moving forward. The foundation is not meeting in November or December just because of the holidays. So it'll be a little while before we circle back on that. Although there is activity in the foundation, they're recruiting some new members, and some of the longtime volunteers have been working on their filing cabinet in the library. So.
Okay, and the next thing is labor management. I don't think there's been a labor management meeting, has there?
There has not. There was one scheduled for this coming Monday, and I did reach out and cancel it because the administrative side consists of myself and the 2 board members who just resigned. So I will need to work with the staff to cover a few things, sort of on a hand-to-mouth basis. But in general, we'll be okay. Both sides would like to get together soon. Negotiations begin shortly after January 1st for a contract that expires on June 30th. And as such, it's my, I guess I would urge the election for a president and a vice president as soon as possible, arguably in a special meeting before December 16th, I think is the board meeting, because time does fly. Bill.
I recognize that Norina isn't here, but was there an update about the personnel committee?
No.
No.
They didn't meet.
Thanks.
Okay, the next up is Richard with policy.
Thank you. Policy Committee has had a couple of meetings. I don't know exactly how many, but we have presented two things for your consideration in the board packet for tonight. One of them is the revised customer service policy, which you will remember generated quite a bit of discussion when it came around the first time. So we spent just about 2 full meetings on this, and I'd like to thank the rest of the committee members for their diligence in considering this. The customer service policy you have in front of you with the changes in from what the committee originally drafted are in red, but I can read it to you. I will just tell you that the goal here was to make sure that we had the protected federal classes in here in terms of our non-discrimination. There was also a question that we're not being truly non-discriminatory, because if somebody is a bad actor, we can refuse to serve them. So that is the second paragraph here. And the third paragraph, again, we do some age discrimination, although I don't like that word. We are doing certain services that are only for people of certain age, which is the third paragraph here. But we think we came up with a good compromise for the customer service policy. And I will present these individually, and I would like to make a motion to accept the customer service policy.
Rich, we can't vote on these yet.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. But the motion is there for the next meeting.
Correct.
Yep. So they're entered in as a motion to be decided on the next meeting.
Thank you, Jenna.
Can I ask a quick question? This is just a clarification on the next meeting. Where does the requirement come from that we have to wait till the next meeting to vote on policies? So our bylaws say that amendments to the bylaws must be presented a meeting in advance and then voted on the next, but I don't see something similar for policies generally. But maybe I'm missing a requirement elsewhere. Yes.
I may be able to help answer that, and people can correct me if I'm wrong. Less than a couple of weeks ago, maybe about a month ago, the new rules and regulations for the Freedom of Information and Sunshine laws came out, and they require any resolution that is going to be voted on by a public body to be posted, I think, within 24 hours or maybe 72 hours of the meeting, unless it's of a urgent nature or something like that. So this certainly would fall into that category.
So is there, and I don't know when it becomes public, but by including proposed policies or things like that in our board packet, I don't know when that becomes made available to the public, but is that sufficient, or do we need to somehow post things? Or if we again, for this particular policy, I don't think there's any urgency, and I have no problem with leaving it till next month, but I just want to understand, because this has come up before where people have said policies need to wait until the next meeting, and I just want to be clear on what the actual requirement is. As long as we have 24 hours or whatever the requirement is and we post it publicly, is that sufficient to meet the requirements, and what do we need to do to have it posted? I just want to understand what the requirements are.
Michael, I think your observation is very astute. Looking at Article 10 of the bylaws, Article 10, number 2 says proposed changes must be presented in writing. That's where it talks about that, but I don't think it covers policies. Now, the bigger question is, was the board packet for this meeting posted to give the public access at least 24 hours in advance?
Can I break in here for a second on this? Again, for those of you that didn't see the name in the box, Tim Burke from Upper Hudson. The change to the open meetings law, it requires the library to either post or have available upon request the information that's going to be discussed at a board meeting 24 hours before. So there's not a requirement to post. That's certainly the best practice for the transparency, but the language is clear that it's post or have available if requested. And I expect that the library administration had the packet available if it was requested well in advance of 24 hours. And again, typically bylaws changes are subject to that, extra meeting to review. That's very typical in lots of bylaws. It's not typical of policies at all.
So there's nothing to preclude us from approving this policy tonight.
As I look at it, there's nothing to preclude the board from taking action on those policies. Again, I'm not speaking to your traditions or practices. I'm just talking about the specific laws that were mentioned.
Well, Michael is right. It's not in the bylaws that we have to do that.
Tim Burke, the second option, post or have available if requested for discussion 24 hours before. Well, if you didn't post it, how would somebody know?
Well, they would know because there is they know there's a regular meeting coming up. The public knows. And that's the public's responsibility to seek out the information they need. They shouldn't have to fight for it. They shouldn't have to argue for it. But they do have a responsibility to keep track of the posted meetings, know there's a meeting coming up.
Tim, let me just jump in here. When Governor Hochul brought this and had a press conference on it, the whole point that she was making is that posting isn't enough. In the old regulations, you had to have the material available at the meeting for people to read. But the point that she was making is what Marcia is saying. If you don't post what you're going to be discussing and any resolution that you're having, then you have no idea what ideas are being presented. So I think the spirit of the new regulation is total transparency. And actually on our board, we have over a 20-year history of presenting a policy, letting people comment on it, and then it would go up for approval at the second meeting. Sort of not exactly like the bylaws, because there you need a 2/3 approval. But as I said, so there is a tradition on our board that you present a policy, give people time to reflect, make any suggestions. Second time around is when you actually vote. And I know in many organizations, you have information items, which would be like the policies that are being discussed. And then you have another segment in your agenda that said board approval. And that's where you would place the policy second time around. So I guess I just have a little different interpretation of what you're saying, because if you listen to Governor Hochul's press conference, her whole point was that, as Marcia pointed out, unless you post the resolution, unless you post what you're going to be discussing, the public really, you can't put that obligation on the public to say, well, okay, what are you going to be discussing here? So that's, I think, the reason here. I mean, this particular policy, it's not going to make or break anything, but it's a matter of procedure. And I think
again, what I'm speaking to is just the language of the law. And it's clear that it's this or this. Each organization can make the choice about which of the ors they choose. And again, I'm not, this library has a tradition of giving that time. That's absolutely fine. I was just speaking to the language of the law relative to the question that came up from board members about, are we required by this new law to wait a month because we didn't post it? You're not by the law. You are bound by whatever traditions the board chooses to adopt. You can put it in the bylaws if you want. You can just leave it as a practice that everybody understands.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Richard?
I'm really fine either way. I think if it's not in the bylaws, it goes back to New York state law, and New York state law allows us to do it either way. So I think it's kind of what the board is more comfortable with. If we want to, post things, but then we have to post everything. Jenna raised a question, we hadn't put the check register out. And I don't know if the board packet, including the bylaws resolution and the financials and everything else, was posted at a publicly available site at least 24 hours in advance, or if we have the ability to do that on a consistent basis. So we may be handcuffing ourselves by adopting the posting policy if we go that way.
I think we do have the ability on our website that once Jenna has the packet ready, we post it, the agenda items and any backup materials like the director's reports and things such as that as they become available. So I think technologically we can do it if we choose to do it.
I believe we do it as a matter of course.
Do we do it now?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
It's on the website.
The tradition is to have everything posted online, right?
The minutes are posted online.
Yeah. But aren't the reports posted as well in the agenda?
I believe so.
So,
I don't
I
know,
would like to say,
Jenna can answer that. Jenna, are those things posted on or Luann, on our website?
I can speak to that. Yes, they're posted, but with the financials, sometimes they don't become available until a couple hours before the board meeting.
Right.
Right.
But when they're ready, I post them.
Okay, and where on our website would people find them so we can tell the people where to look?
It's under, I don't know it by heart.
Board of Trustees.
Yes. And then if you scroll down to meeting minutes, I think.
Mhm.
You click there, there are several folders for the board packet.
But if we're going to adopt this as a policy, we can't vote on things that we don't post 24 hours in advance. It's going to make the financials difficult.
Well, it's going to make it impossible because we get
Thank
them day of.
It's being diplomatic.
Yeah. No, I mean, realistically, if we post the packet, then the agenda is out there for the public to see. So if somebody wanted to say, I'd like to see the financials, there's no way we're going to be able to comply with the 24-hour rule. I mean, forget about the post or, I mean, this is just in general. So we couldn't supply it 24 hours before because we get it day of. It's not a criticism, it's just, that's the way it is.
so if I could comment on this, I think this issue about the financials, I think this is important, but that's not a matter of our policy. It's a matter of state law. So I think we just need some clarity on whether that is included in this, whether not having the actual financials available 24 hours in advance is a problem that puts us in violation. And if it is, we're going to have to figure out how to address that. But that's not an issue of policy. It's an issue of whether we're in compliance with the state law. As far as the general practice, I think there's a lot of value in what Barbara was saying before about the tradition of generally giving a full month of notice. And so I would be perfectly happy to stick with that, at least as to anything that isn't super, time pressing, the urgent that needs to be done. But I think it's good to have clarity that if there are urgent things or more time sensitive things, that we do have that flexibility as long as we've, posted the board packet ahead of time. So I appreciate the clarity on this.
Yeah.
Okay, Richard, do you want to deal with the other matter that you?
Can I just ask a really quick question to that point, just for my clarity? So what have we sort of said as far as tradition goes are the ones that have to age versus votes that don't? Because I feel like since my short tenure on the board so far, there have definitely been items that we voted on that weren't punted to the next meeting. So I don't have a clear understanding of what falls in the category of requiring it be aged and what doesn't.
Okay, I can maybe help a little bit there. Prior to Governor Hochul's announcement, we did have the tradition with the policy. You post it, you talk about it in one meeting, you vote on it, in the second meeting. And that's worked fine, up, I guess, up until today. Other matters, we would make a resolution and we'd discuss it and we'd pass it. I think the aim of Governor Hochul's press conference and the passage of the sunshine laws, sort of making them a little more strict, was again to provide more transparency to the public as to what you're doing. Now, according to Tim, and which wasn't my interpretation, but according to Tim Burke, you can still sort of use the old ways of just having material available at your meeting or maybe on your website.
I guess I want to just clarify my question. I appreciate you trying explaining, but I think I more meant, for example, we voted on the personnel actions. Those didn't have to be sort of presented and then voted on at the next meeting. So I just wanted to understand more clearly where the line is. As a new board member, I want to understand or know what to expect as far as timing of things brought to the board, what needs to age and what doesn't for a vote.
I think the only thing, as far as I know, that needs to age are your policies, unless, you change tradition. And as I think Richard or Mike pointed out, it's not really written in our policies, but it's something that we've done for many, many years. And I think with, a lot of logic, that you could change. Our personnel actions, according to Jenna, were posted, within the 24-hour period on our website. So they were available to the public. And, we just have to be more cognizant of being as transparent as we can be. And I think we should get clarification, as I think either Richard or Mike pointed out on, say, our financials that we know, can't come in maybe sometimes within that 24-hour window. So, I think we're in no emergency mode here. We can seek, further clarification and, discuss it further.
So I have one other point that I'd like to get a little clarification on this, just as far as the law is that sometimes we have we might have a policy that has been posted. It was in the board packet. It's been posted. It's been out there. So we comply with this 24-hour rule. But then at the meeting where there's discussion on it, there are amendments on the floor on that. So the actual policy that gets enacted is different in certain ways from the one that was publicly posted. Is that an issue? Is that a problem? Or is that fine as long as the issue that was up for discussion that was posted and available to the public?
Well, this is
the law says that the material that the board packet, if you will, and I'll do a little more research on what the law requires in the board packet if it's that specific. But the actions of the board at the meeting, if it chooses to change things, you can't post that ahead of time. You can't, the law doesn't hamstring the board from making decisions. It simply says, what are you going to be looking at so the public can see it ahead of time? That's really the intent of it. So any actions that are taken by the board to change anything, that you're not precluded from doing any of that because you haven't shared it ahead of time. It has to be done in real time by the board. It's just a matter of providing the material that the board is going to have to start the meeting to the public. Does that help, Mike?
Yeah, I mean that makes sense to me. So if that's what the law requires, then that makes sense to me.
The other thing, Mike, the beauty of having that second read where you actually approve the policy, again, gives the public time to see any changes that have been made or recommended, by that second meeting.
But in answer to Vanessa's question regarding personnel changes, that's never been a situation with the board where we've waited because a lot of these personnel changes, which are hirings and firings, are time bound. You know, people retire at the end of November. We certainly can't hold those up
Sure.
for the next board meeting.
Got it. So it's strictly policies.
Yeah, really. Yeah.
Correct.
And if the board would like, the policies committee could draft something that firms up the policies, as well as a policy on policies, essentially.
Right. You know, and we could take into consideration those policy directives that come out of committee that really need to be, that are posted, that really need to be acted upon at the meeting that we're discussing it, because they're time bound and they're important, or because they're of an emergency nature. So
Sure.
I think we can differentiate between the customer service policy, which, and no slight, Richard, but you know, if we do it December, nothing terrible is going to happen. But we may be confronted with a policy decision that your committee finds that really needs to be done very quickly.
And I realize I launched us down this road a bit with my question, and so
no, it's a very fair question.
well, but I guess I was just going to offer that this might be a discussion more appropriate for a board training or retreat. I didn't mean to distract us from the work. I know
No,
it's
not at all.
7:30, so thank you.
Okay, Richard, you want to discuss the potential change to the bylaws?
Gladly. So the way this came about is we had a situation with a trustee who did miss several meetings. And Caitlin felt that the process had become cumbersome and difficult, and the board would have to hear about a lot of details about the issues involved. The reason that this came to the policies committee is that I've always felt that having it just cover 3 consecutive meetings as a reason for a voluntary resignation did not make sense. If you miss 3 meetings, if you come to 1, then miss 2, you come to 1 and then miss 2, what sense does that make? However, like many things in the education law, as I'm learning, you can't be more restrictive than the education law allows. So all the education law says is 3 consecutive meetings, and we cannot do anything more stringent than that. So the amendment.
Richard, can I just, one more point of clarification? I'm sorry.
Sure.
So the ed law says that a trustee that misses 3 consecutive meetings without excuse approved by the board is deemed to have resigned.
Right.
So, but the onus of the law comes back on the board, the individual board, and its standard for excuse for missing a meeting. If the board says you missed the meeting, we understand because your kid was sick 3 times in a row, then there's no unexcused absence. The person missed the meeting, but the board said it was okay.
So I think we've addressed this, and you have the language. Tim, you may not have gotten a packet, but I will read what we recommend changing Article 4, Section 2B. Trustees are expected to attend all board meetings. However, it is recognized that absences may occur for excusable reasons. As a courtesy, trustees are expected to notify the library director or board president of any expected absence. Upon a second consecutive absence, the trustee is required to meet with the board president to explain the absence and confirm their intent to remain serving on the board. If a third consecutive absence were to occur, the board must vote to deem the reasons for the absences as acceptable, with the absent trustee recusing themselves from the vote. If at least 2 of the 3 consecutive absences are not deemed acceptable by the board, the trustee is deemed to have vacated their office by refusal to serve. So it provides a stepwise procedure there, still requires the board to look at the excuses, but it also gives everybody one free get out of jail free card to miss 1 meeting, understanding we all have lives outside of here.
That for a second.
Go ahead, Peter.
So just so everybody understands, I think Barbara and myself are the only ones on the board when we originally did that, and that was in regards to somebody who was very, very sick, and it was months that they were unable to come to a meeting. And as a result of that, it put a strain on committees and different things. If we were to take, I think, most board members on here, I think some of us have forgotten that we volunteer. But if you took most of us on here, things happen in life, whether you have trips or family issues, health issues. And it's just my personal opinion, but if I have a family member with health issues or I have health issues, it's nobody's business on this board. So the fact that I would have to come to this board and explain to the board, we just talked about open meeting things and all that stuff, that I would have to share personal issues that are going on with me is absolutely absurd. So this is a ridiculous, I've gotten in trouble for saying that word before, but ridiculous. Everybody here volunteers. I don't think we need to be putting this onto people like that. We already have a 5-year term, which is, in my opinion, way too long anyways. I've sat on this board for over 9 years at this point in time. Life happens. Life happens. So I just want to make it very clear. I think this is a poor idea. I don't think there's any need for it here. I think we don't have to, every rule that we've set in place does not need to be adjusted. That was meant because of one specific person who unfortunately has passed on at this point in time, who was very, very sick. That's just all I want to say with that.
Tim Burke, don't we have to do this to be in compliance with education law?
You have to follow education law, but it doesn't have to be as specific as this. The board can have all sorts of different levels of, acceptance of an excuse. And that can be something very, very light. Said, I couldn't make it because I was sick, it doesn't even have to be that. I mean, Peter makes a good point about, the whole sharing of information.
Tim, can I just read what our original ones stated? It says, in accordance with applicable law, any trustee who fails to attend 3 consecutive board meetings without excuse accepted as satisfactory to the trustees may be deemed to have vacated his or her office by refusal to serve.
That's the text of education law. That literally is kind of quote unquote taken right out of education law. So right there, you're just fine.
Just leaving it at that.
Yep.
I disagree very strongly with that, and I'll explain why. And I brought this up. The current language of our policy is very vague. It doesn't explain where the onus is to act in the situation. And what I think is actually the most straightforward reading of that suggests that this happens automatically by operation of the policy, the bylaws, unless the board affirmatively acts to accept those excuses. I think there's a fair reading here that when someone has missed 3 meetings, unless the board takes some affirmatively action to excuse them, they are deemed to have vacated it, which is I think is unless we want that to happen. And again, we had a situation with 3 consecutive meetings. The board never took any action to affirmatively excuse those. There's an argument that under our current policy, by operation, it would have already caused that to become vacant. I don't like that ambiguity. I don't like that reading is, I think, a very plausible reading, and I think we need to clear it up so it's clear where the onus is to act and what steps need to be taken. If we want to discuss having a different standard or not being quite so stringent or whatever, that's fine, but I do not like the current policy and that we have in place right now.
Peter, do you see any amending of Rich's proposal here that would soften the sharing of medical information or whatever? Would you have different wording?
I just think that the way it is now, that 3 consecutive meetings, that we can go from there. I don't think asking for anybody to disclose their personal issues to anybody on the board is necessary. It's not appropriate. I really think we're crossing a line with this here, that it's not a good place. You know, everybody has a responsibility. Just so everybody can understand, there was a question recently, which is probably what's being mentioned here, about my attendance at some meetings and whether they were excused or unexcused. You know, so I just want to make that very clear, just so that we're not, you know, nobody thinks I'm not acknowledging. I know where a lot of this is directed at. All right. And whether two board members who are no longer with us attempted at one point in time to push me out. And I know that that's where this whole topic came from. So anyways, that's all I want to say. I just think we should stick to the way it's currently written. We don't need to be asking people what their personal reasons are for not being at a meeting.
All right, Richard?
So
Yeah, that is the way it's written. What Barbara read is the way it exists now.
Right. I mean, it's always required the excuses to be approved by the board, and therefore, by implication, you have to share your reasons with the board.
So I just wanted to just offer a comment.
I also resent your implication that this is directed toward one individual. I can tell you in the policies committee, I have no malice toward anyone, nor do I think the policy committee does. So I strongly object to your comment.
Okay, Vanessa?
Yes, thank you. I've been waiting for a few minutes just to comment. I do want to say that I think the spirit of this comes from recognizing that anyone who runs for a board of trustees has an interest and a willingness to serve our community. Wanting to serve the community and being able to are two different things. And just this week, I have an example of a committee meeting where we couldn't take any action because we didn't have any quorum because a committee member who we anticipated coming didn't. And so there are real ramifications and impacts to the other board members when absences occur. And I don't think anyone here thinks that life doesn't happen. You might be having a really bad year, like last year was not a good year for me, and it would not have been, however much I wanted to serve, a reasonable expectation that I could meet my obligations. And so I think that if we keep that in mind, we want to make sure that we develop a policy that's clear and protects us from ourselves to some extent, because I think all of us here are really willing to accept any explanation that the other gives, knowing that we're good people, but it saddles us as a board for getting the work done. So that's my comment.
Any other comments? I just have a question, Peter, if the first two sentences, I don't know if you have it in front of you, but trustees are expected to attend all board meetings. However, it is recognized that absences may occur for excusable reasons. As a courtesy, trustees are expected to notify the library director or board president of any expected absence. Now, that's not requiring why you can't, just that you're not coming. What we've experienced over this past year, and again, whether it's COVID related or whatever, in years past, if an individual wasn't able to make a meeting, they usually would call either the board president or Tim or Jenna and say, you know, I'm not able to attend. And that was that. This past year, I think one of the reasons that this little section was put in is because, you know, you're sort of sitting there at a meeting, as happened with Vanessa, and your quorum isn't there and nobody's been notified and you've called the meeting. And so that part I personally don't have any trouble with, but does anybody else have any comments on the suggestions?
Just, I don't think the bylaws here are addressing committees. I recognize that that's still a problem, but the bylaws are specifically addressing attendance at board meetings, not committees, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Sure. I just used it as an example for sort of the implications.
I absolutely understand, and I agree with you. I'm just saying that, you know, to the comment about, you know, we have this problem with committees, this no matter what we write in here, it doesn't solve it. This is specific to just board attendance.
Mm-hmm. Well, Richard, you with Mike, who I think agrees that all the changes, or at least most of the changes, are warranted. Maybe take a look at it at the next policy committee meeting again.
We can take a look at it, but I don't think that we are able to, if we're going to excuse absences, we have to know why those absences occurred. Unless my logic is wrong. The state education law requires us to excuse people. And we can excuse people just because they say, I couldn't make it. But I don't know that that's what we want as a board.
Okay. Everybody satisfied with that? They're just going to take another look at it and we'll look at it again in December.
Tim, it looked like Tim Wiles was trying to say something, but he's muted.
Oh, okay. I can't even see him. Go ahead.
So I just want to say, it's fine with me if we look at it in policy again. To me, the problem is in the difference between notify and accept. And over the 8 years that I've been the library director, there have been several occasions where I get a text 5 minutes before a board meeting, not going to make it, and not always for, catastrophic reasons. So to me, the crux of the problem is, basically you need a procedure by which you accept, like texting me doesn't mean the board has accepted it.
And I'll just say quickly, I'm happy to revisit the details of this in the policy committee if that's what people want, and I'd welcome input from people, but I want to reiterate, I am not comfortable with the current existing policy. I think we have a situation under the current policy. If someone misses 3 consecutive meetings, perhaps the issue is raised by someone that they've missed those 3 meetings, and then the board never takes any action to excuse those absences. Has that person been deemed to no longer be a member of the board? There's at least a very plausible reading that they have, and I don't think that's what people want. Or we should at least be clear on that and know that if the board doesn't affirmatively step in to excuse that, then that's what we're saying, and that's at least how it reads to me right now, and I don't like that.
I could accept a little bit of what Richard and Mike, what you're saying. My big issue with it is having to disclose personal information to board members. No disrespect to anybody on this board other than a few who I know because of school or life. Most of you I don't know on a personal basis other than being on this board. So for me to have to disclose personal information about myself, my family, whatever the case might be, I think is very inappropriate. If I submit something and saying, hey, listen, I can't be here for the specific, for whatever reason, I'm not going to be available. I'm going to be absent, and I ask for that to be excused. I don't really think somebody needs to be giving me, I don't want to know somebody's personal business. I have no desire to know their personal business. If they've asked to be excused, that should be sufficient.
Could I just ask Tim Burke, you've dealt with a lot of different libraries. Do any of them have these strict policies, or is it mostly just a reiteration of the law?
Just about all the libraries in their bylaws have some version of the text from ed law. Again, it puts the burden on the board to determine its own procedure for excusing an absence. At the end of the day, this shouldn't be a problem for most trustees because they volunteer to do this. They show up for the meetings. They're aware of the schedule, all that. Life does happen. I acknowledge that. And that's what excuses are for when life happens. I have to assume that every one of you and every one of our member library boards, trustees have gone into this with the well-intentioned to show up at every meeting and participate and make their library better, make their community better. I have no reason to believe that any of you aren't doing the same thing. So I think getting a little too caught up in some of the details may be, kind of slowing you down from some other things you could be working on. Again, just based on a lot of other boards, there's not a lot more detail put into the bylaws about this excuse question.
Okay, thank you so much, Tim. Rich, are you all set for this meeting with your report?
I am all set.
Oh, thank you. Vanessa, COVID action.
It looked like, did Phil have his hand up? It looked like he,
Oh, thank you for
I
helping.
did, but
I didn't see that. Go ahead, Phil. I'm sorry.
we don't need to extend this particular conversation that much longer, but if anybody is interested, I have how Albany Public handles this, if anyone wants to hear that.
Why don't you could either read it or give us a copy, in our email.
I could send that over. I can give you a quick skim. They have the bylaws that are probably fairly similar. There's a reference to it saying any trustee who is absent from 3 consecutive board meetings and/or 4 meetings of the total number of meetings held by the board in any given year shall be deemed to have resigned as a trustee if such absences are determined by a majority vote of the trustees then in office to have been without reasonable cause. But separately, there's a policy that tells us how they handle it, which says in the event that a trustee is absent from 3 consecutive board meetings or from 4 board meetings within the preceding year, the board president is responsible for speaking with the trustee as soon as possible, but no more than 2 weeks following the most recent absence to determine the reason for the absences and report any concerns to the board as a whole. And that is the end of that.
And in my understanding, that 4-meeting absence goes above and beyond education law and really would not be enforceable, from what Chris Lynn Shenton has explained to me.
and,
I think
and
you're
also, at one of it was the trustee book club, not this one that was just this week, but the previous month's trustee book club, this issue came up. And according to the presenter, they told us that you could not make it more stringent than that. It had to be only the 3 consecutive meetings.
Right.
Now, just for context, interestingly, that presenter took the position the board should accept almost nothing as an excuse, because his position was that it is more important to have full participation and active board members at the meetings rather than accepting lots of excuses and having low numbers. I'm not endorsing that. I'm just saying that was the position that was presented at that particular book club.
that certainly doesn't lead to good collegiality, I don't imagine.
Well, I don't think that would pass muster under the ed law.
Why is that? I mean,
Because the first sentence of the current bylaw says somebody who fails to attend 3 consecutive meetings without excuse accepted as satisfactory to the trustees. If you're saying that the standard is you miss 3 meetings, you're out, I'm not sure that would pass muster under the language.
I think the idea is it doesn't define what's an excuse that's satisfactory to the trustees. So if they choose to say that just about nothing is good enough for us, then that's within the power of the board to just say, well, unless it, I don't accept just about anything as a valid excuse. So I think there's a lot of flexibility. We discussed the issue of the excuses at the policy meeting and decided we didn't want to spell out what was a valid excuse. We thought that's better left to the board members' discretion and individual determination of whether an excuse is valid or not. So we just left it as unexcused. But I just so.
I can't imagine for myself, and this is just me. I can't imagine an excuse that I would have for a board meeting that I wouldn't feel comfortable sharing with anyone. I'm sick, my wife is sick, my child is sick. There's a problem at my house that requires my urgent attention. I'm not going to give you my lab values and my x-ray results, but I can't imagine that I would have something, my life is not that interesting, that I would have something that I wouldn't be willing to share with the board about why I missed a meeting.
Okay, thanks, Rich. Vanessa, do you want to give us your report now?
Sure. I can say that the COVID committee or action committee has met twice since our last board meeting. We're working on a revised draft of the pandemic operations plan. It's been a very robust discussion at times and exploring some different approaches. I would say that primarily the discussions have been around our COVID policies for the library as a place of employment. So that's one segment of it. And then the other around public service. And so we've been doing some work to sort of true up the language in the plan so that it leaves us in a position to stay up to date with changing CADC recommendations or local health department guidance, and as well as a revised services chart at the end that would build in some flexibility and articulate some of the discretion that we would like the library director and staff to have. So we have likely a couple more meetings before we'll have a draft to present to this group. So that is my report for tonight.
Thank you, Vanessa. Any questions for Vanessa? No, seeing none. At least I don't see any hands. Tim, do you want to do the Upper Hudson report? Thank you, Vanessa.
A little louder, Tim. We can't hear you through the mute.
It's not a ton of stuff to report on. It's just stuff that actually our colleague Tim Burke is keeping us posted about and working on. There are 2 or 3 different potential federal sources of revenue coming to UHLS for targeted specific purposes, but there's really no detail worth sharing yet at this point in time. I think Tony was just excited about it. So it, you know, like I'm not trying to minimize the work of UHLS by any means, and I'm very grateful for you being here, Tim. But the cut of these various pies that will come to the Guilderland Public Library is not worth talking about speculatively. We could just talk about it when it's a little more real. So is that okay, Tim?
Yeah, the only other thing I just let you guys know about the last Upper Hudson board meeting is that the board of Upper Hudson approved the 2022 budget for Upper Hudson, and because of a couple of federal funding issues or programs that we took advantage of, we were in a position to not increase the Ulan fee, which is the name of the cost share that each library pays to Upper Hudson on an annual basis. So the Ulan fee is you know, your library's skin in the game to help us provide the services we provide. So we're in a position to be able to pass a budget without an increase in Ulan fees from 21 to 22. And Tim has that number. That'll be for next year and has it built into the budget, I'm sure. So that was the other good news from a member library perspective.
Thank you, Tim. Old business. Is there any old business, Tim, that needs to be resurrected?
No, we, as you know, we are, you know, considering fine-free in the future and also working on abbreviated MOU with the Guilderland School District.
Okay, thank you.
Richard Rubin has his hand up.
Oh, thank you, Rich.
I don't know if this goes in old business, but I'd like to resurrect something from the past. So I guess it is old business. When Carol and Margaret left, we talked about doing exit interviews. And my recollection was that we talked about either the board or the personnel committee doing those. And I'd like to suggest, I wish Narina was here. I understand that she's not. She does not need to provide me with an excuse. But I would like to suggest that the personnel committee consider exit interviews for certain levels of staff. I'm not everyone, but certainly administration and librarians. You know, as just a suggestion, but I really think we need to do that because I think as we're trying to build and move forward, knowing about the staff's reasons for leaving is going to be critically important information for us. So I don't know the best way to get that suggestion to Norina or if my colleagues agree with that, but I would like to move that up on our priority list.
Tim, do you want to comment on that?
Well, when the 2 people in question and also Ann Wemple Person, who is a librarian. When I spoke with each of the three of them about their departures, I offered exit interviews of, I said, with me, with the board, with whoever you want, anonymous, however you want to package it. And everyone seemed appreciative, but nobody seemed like beating down my door or the board's door to want to do that. I certainly support it. I think Rich is 100% right. And I think I don't know this, but I'm reading in the papers a lot that we're entering into an era where employee retention is going to be difficult. And combined with the fact that filling open positions is currently difficult, I think it's a wise suggestion, and I would support it.
Any other thoughts? Okay, the next order of new business is recruiting for vacancies.
Oh, I'm sorry, I had my hand up, and it's just sort of in a similar fashion of Richard. I think this belongs in old business. One of my first meetings, I brought up a request for some board training, or I know that we've talked about ongoing board training, but I just wanted to re-up that and include some training around the responsibilities of committee. As a new committee chair, and not to lengthen this call right here, I could use some instruction and clarification and guidance on committee chair procedures and responsibilities, because I heard Peter mention in his report an expectation for a report that I'm certain that I have not met as the COVID chair. And so I need some help with that.
Vanessa, I can just
I can
clarify that a little bit. Jenna has a minutes form, and the expectation, or what has been the expectation, is that you send just minutes. They don't have to be tremendously detailed, but there's a template that Jenna has, and then she distributes it to the board in the packet. So it's as simple and complicated as that. And she sent out the template, but I'm sure she can send another one to each of the committee chairs.
Vanessa, you could probably pull up some old committee reports and just see the format and see if it works for you.
Okay, I mean, sure, yes, I can look at a template, but I think if we have the opportunity to do some board training, some hearing from other people's experience as chairing committees, that's
I'm not disagreeing. I think we need training on a wide variety of things.
Sure. Thank you. I just wanted to mention that.
Okay.
And I just mentioned, Barbara, that the library has an employee handbook that's updated every few years, and I'm currently searching it on my computer, and I have it on my computer. There is a section about exit interviews. I will try to update you once I've found what page that's on. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other old business? If not, let's move on to the new business of recruiting for our vacant board positions. Marcia, I think you're head of the nominating committee, right? Marcia, you're muted.
Sorry. Yeah, I didn't have time today to see who else is on the committee, but I have a feeling that at least one person who's on the committee is no longer on the board.
Okay. I know what we've done in the past is that we've used the newsletter. We've used our sign to publicly recruit people.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think. Tim, you can help me out here. I know we've used the sign, the newsletter, and we've had postings in the library itself. And I'm talking, the old library. And I'm sure Luann could help us with that. And just ask people to submit their, letter of intent and a resume. And then depending upon the numbers, if there's just a few people that have come forward, usually the full board on some evening at a special meeting, will interview the candidates and make a decision that evening. That doesn't mean that same strategy has to be followed, but it's worked in the past.
Yeah, what would be nice if we have a special meeting regarding the election of the president and the vice president. And by the way, we then also have to replace Kathy in her current her current situation as secretary, we have to find a nominee for secretary as well, if Kathy is in fact moved to either one or the other two. So we may have 3 of those to fill, and then we have a board member to fill. We mentioned earlier about one board member. Yeah, we talked about having a special meeting, and it would be nice if we could all do it all in the same special meeting. In other words, the officers and then a board meeting and then a board member.
Could I just ask, for the sake of anyone watching or just for the public record, can we back up and sort of give notice to why these actions are necessary? I'm not sure we've actually mentioned the resignations and the cascading sort of decisions that have to happen.
Sure. Do you want to mention it or do you want me to do it? Okay. Yeah, for the benefit of the public, our president resigned a few days ago, citing personal reasons. And shortly thereafter, our vice president, who automatically would have moved up to the presidency, again, shared that she wanted to resign from the board, again, for personal reasons. And so we have 2 officer vacancies that have to be filled by board members. But in our bylaws is a proviso that the person who gets the next highest vote but was not elected would be offered the position of trustee. And fortunately, we have a wonderful gentleman, Phil Metzger, who agreed to do that today and is now a member of our board. But we still have another slot to fill. And the next person down the line is not able to fill that slot. So we have to reach out to the public and hope there's a good citizen out there who would be glad to help out on the library board. And both of these terms would just be for May, the May election.
Yeah.
And they would.
Barbara?
Yes.
I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. I interrupted you.
Oh, that's okay. I'm just saying that person, both of these individuals would have to run for re-election in May. And in one case would be seated immediately in the vacant position, I believe.
Yeah.
But no, if they're appointed, then they would, I believe serve until July, but maybe Tim can help me on that one.
Yeah.
Tim Burke.
Yeah, they would serve until July 1 or June 30 when
Right.
the new trustees, you can only serve in an appointed position up until the next election opportunity.
Right. Yeah.
But if one of those seats is not filled at the election in May, then that person could start immediately. But our goal here is to get someone where it's so early in the year to fill that vacant position right now.
Right. Yeah. I just wanted to clarify something you said, Barbara.
Sure.
You said the next person who would be eligible is not willing to do it. We were referring to Herb Hemingsbury. But there was some question as to whether or not the bylaws would permit, other than choosing Phil Metzger to fill one of the slots that was left vacant by Caitlin and Noreen, whether we in fact had the ability pursuant to the bylaws to go down and solicit Herb as the person after Phil who got the highest vote without being elected.
Okay, well, maybe we can look at the bylaws then for the future. And I mean, that'd be logical that a person expressed an interest in serving and, we could reach out to them. But if our bylaws, don't allow us to go down the list, then maybe we could look at it and agree to change it.
Yeah. I'm just pointing out that there was some, there is some question as to whether we could have reached Herb anyway.
Okay, thank you.
So as the chair of the nominating committee, I open the floor to any suggestion that anyone has about a possible person who would be able to fill the one vacancy that still exists on the board.
So
what I'd like to do is have a meeting scheduled. I'll check as to who's on the nominating committee because there are 3 people on the committee. And if I think our committee is required to have at least 3, but 3 to 5, according to the bylaws. I think that's correct. But if one of those persons is someone who's already resigned, then we have an issue with the nominating committee.
Okay, Rich, do you have an
Because-
idea?
It's you, me, and Narina. But the thing I
Oh,
would like
okay.
to point out that the bylaws doesn't specify any duties for the nominating committee or any role for the nominating committee in this situation. The bylaws committee specifically says that the bylaws committee will be convened to nominate officers, and at that point, their duties will be
Right.
fulfilled.
So
Period.
there's another, if I could
It,
address
ahead.
this, there's another provision that addresses this. So it's provision Article 3, Section 3C, and it specifically says that in this event where we have an unfilled vacancy, it says the nominating committee shall solicit interest from eligible persons and select a candidate who shall be presented for approval by the board.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, if you look at the committees, it appears as if the nominating committee has already fulfilled its obligation, in which case it appears as if it's kind of disappeared.
Right, but that's actually the previous nominating committee.
Yeah,
Because
but
the
Mike
previous
is
nominating
right
committee
that,
filled its.
no, I agree with you,
Yeah.
Mike, that the nominating committee is charged in this particular instance with soliciting and then making a recommendation to the board.
Okay.
So,
So Marcia, you can work with Luann and Tim to get the postings out for the community member that would serve as our new trustee. And that would be a starting point.
well, here's the problem. The nominating committee has 3 people on it. One of them is no longer on it.
No, Narina's still here.
Oh, Narina. I thought you said
You, me, and
Noreen.
Narina.
Oh, then we're fine. I'm sorry. I withdraw my my comment.
Okay, so we'll solicit people from the community for that. And then you and your committee will, when you, next few days or whenever Narina's back in town, call various board members and see, if there's any interest in serving in
Yeah.
an office
We
role.
don't have a role in filling the officer positions. I'm sorry to be so tight on this point, but I think we need to only do what our role is as the nominating committee. And no,
Yeah, no, yeah.
nowhere in the
This is just
bylaws
for
does
this
it say anything
is
about
just to-
us filling officer positions that are vacant.
No, Rich, this is just to fill the position that's left, the one position of trustee.
No, Barbara was seeming to indicate that we were to look for officer candidates as well.
No, that's not our role. What we need to do is find a person to fill one of the two resignations of Noreen and Caitlin, one of which has been filled by Phil. That leaves one vacant
Right,
trustee
correct.
position.
Correct.
Our job as a nominating committee is to find a candidate and present that candidate or a list of candidates to the board for the board's approval, just to fill that trustee slot. The election of officers is a whole different issue. And that
Michael,
comes from, we're not soliciting for any officer position. We're soliciting to fill one slot for the trustee. So we have an 11-member board.
Michael, can I just ask you, you thought that you found a provision that would allow the nominating committee to take the lead in checking with their fellow board members to see who was interested in serving as an officer?
No, that provision is just for the vacant trustee position.
Oh,
So
okay.
They are supposed to reach out and lead that, but the officer position, it actually, the bylaws say that goes to the whole board, the officer position.
Yeah. So our only charge is to fill the vacancy that's been left, the trustee slot. That's it. Once that's filled, the issue of who will be the officers as chosen by the board from the board members, the trustees, is a different issue. That's not the nominating committee's job.
Well, again, maybe it never has been in the past, but I'm trying to think logically here. In the past, the nominating committee would solicit from their fellow board members by calling them and saying, do you have an interest in any of the, officer slots for the upcoming year? If we don't pass that charge on to you as the nominating committee, then it would be left up to individual board members to
Exactly, to come forward. An email gets
That's
sent.
right.
If you're interested in a board position, please communicate your interest. And then we have an election.
All right. If that's the way folks are comfortable doing it, then that's the way we'll do it.
We don't have any other choice.
Okay. Any other new business then?
Wait,
Yes,
so,
Mike?
are we, as for the elections, there was discussion before about, do we need an emergency meeting sooner than next month to do the officer elections? So, and I don't know the answer. Do we have pressing business or responsibilities that can't wait for the December meeting? But if that is the case, then we should talk about that and maybe put a poll out or something so we can get a meeting maybe the week after Thanksgiving just to get this done.
Right. Well, I think from my standpoint, if Tim is comfortable waiting until December and doesn't see any pressing issues, I mean, I'm fine with that. If he deems it necessary and would like to have a full board on, so to speak, Tim can put out a doodle poll and say, this has come up, but we really would need to have a meeting, and I'm comfortable that way as well. How about you, Mike?
Yeah, I'd like to hear from Tim. Just, I don't know whether we do have a pressing need or not, and so I'd like to hear about that.
Okay, Tim?
Okay, so first I want to just correct what I said verbally, and I put this in the chat, but I did promise Ann just now that I would correct this. She did not express a lack of interest in an exit interview. I obviously don't remember my exact words, but her words are that she might be open to doing an exit interview with a board member when she gets closer to leaving. So I'm glad to correct that in the record. Secondly, theoretically, we have some pressing issues. We need a labor management meeting. The board meeting is scheduled for December 16th, and shortly after January 1st, we should be starting negotiations with CSEA. And the current contract calls for labor management meetings to include the board president and the board vice president. And we don't have either one of those, so we can't schedule a labor management meeting. For example, one pending issue is employees are going to be requesting to extend vacation carryover, beyond December 31st, which is the contractual date, again, as we did last year because of COVID. If you guys are comfortable with me calling those kinds of shots, instead of having a labor management meeting, I'm comfortable making those decisions. There are similar kinds of things. It's really not good practice to not have the quarterly labor management meeting, and you can't have it contractually without a president and a vice president. And I guess I would just argue in general, it's not a good practice to go an extra month without a president or a vice president. I may sound a little frustrated, but I think the group decision to not address that tonight does not serve the library well.
Tim, I guess in what way would you suggest we address it tonight? I mean, people have not been able to contemplate whether they're interested in offices, et cetera.
Well, Rich, with respect, all of you have known for a week that you need a president and a vice president, so that's plenty of time to contemplate whether you're interested. So I would call for a special meeting as soon as possible to get a president and a vice president. It's not within my power, but I just think you guys, the power to run the library comes from you. You give it to me. If you don't exist, I don't have any power. Now I'm comfortable making shots or making the calls if you're comfortable with that. But the way the system is built is my authority comes from you. And currently you guys have no leader to give me that authority.
Okay, getting back to Michael's suggestion, why don't we send out a doodle poll for the week after Thanksgiving and see what would be available, on folks' schedules. And I would say if any of you know for certain that you have another meeting that you're committed to in that week of, what are we talking, November 29th? November 29th through March 4th, I guess it is. Send that to Jenna. And so hopefully she will be able to exclude those dates from possibility so we can have as much participation as possible? Would that work with people or not? I don't see any head shaking one way or the other. Oh, Rich is getting a thumbs up. Okay.
29th.
We'll do
Can I
that.
ask-
Yep, go ahead.
Can I ask a question before we get to scheduling a special meeting? In typical circumstances or circumstances that are less dramatic than this,
Mhm.
what is the procedure for notifying each other of our interest or checking interest, right? Like, I'm concerned that we'll leave this meeting and then how do we know we've only had one person in email sort of express an interest in one of the three, well, because of who it is, the three vacant office positions. If we
Well-
leave here and we schedule another meeting, what's happening between now and then that we know that we have people to vote on at the next meeting? How does this usually roll out?
Well, Vanessa, I've been chair of the nominating committee over the years, and what we always did traditionally before our meeting in July, in fact, as soon as the election is held in May, we will solicit all of our fellow board members and say, do you have any interest in, president, vice president, or whatever? Oftentimes you have a president that's been there and a vice president, a secretary. People will just say, oh no, just let, Susie and Jody do it.
I thought we just said that this nominating committee wasn't responsible for
That's
officers.
what Marcia and the group is saying for this situation. But for a typical situation, the nominating committee is the one that presents the slate to the board to the board itself as to what their recommended slate is. They will propose that at the July meeting, organizational meeting. They will take nominations from the floor in case there's some contention and somebody
Right.
else wants to serve that hasn't been nominated. I think in all the years I've been on the board, that's never actually happened.
So what do we do since we don't have that option of the nomination?
You know,
I think,
I've been,
go ahead, Marcia. Oh, I think we just lost
Listen.
Marcia. What I would say, send
make
the
a
board
suggestion?
an email, to the board itself. I would be interested and, line up a second for yourself, for that particular notice. I think what would be helpful after that, those notices come in, maybe Jenna could say, well, Vanessa and Phil and Barbara are interested in being secretary. And then you would be responsible for getting a second for your nomination. To me, that's a logical way to do it. Now, maybe other people, have other ideas, and I'm totally open to any other way of doing it. This is an unprecedented
I'll do it.
occurrence. So
If I'm gonna solicit for a trustee, I can solicit for anyone who's interested for office, to be an officer. Is Rich there or did he go?
I'm here.
Oh, you and I can't speak for Noreen, but would you be interested in working with me on that?
I will not do that.
Okay.
Not stronger than not interested.
Oh, okay.
okay, so then we'll have to do it. Oh, Michael, I see your hand.
Yeah, I think, I think as long as we give, notice that we're having the election for these positions, that satisfies our requirement in the board. I think as a courtesy, we should probably ask anyone who's interested in one of these to try and let the board know maybe by next week before Thanksgiving, just so people know who's interested and know who's going to be kind of on the slate of potential candidates. But I don't know that we need to formalize anything. Anyone who wants to express interest can do so. And then at the meeting, we'll vote, get it done.
Great. I was just looking for the procedure. So we're going to ask people to email the whole board their interest in an office before Thanksgiving.
I think that would be good. Yeah.
And on Thanksgiving, we would have considered all of the sort of prior self-nominations done until we do the process of nominating from the floor.
I think that's what we're left with right now, Vanessa.
I just wanted to know. I mean, that I'm not looking for anything more than just an agreed upon process, so we all know what we're doing and we don't have to send 2,000 emails about it after the meeting.
Rich, you have a comment?
Yeah, we can't send emails anymore, but that's beside the point. What I
Except for
think
the
we
email
need to
saying
do-
you want to be president, right, Rich?
I think we need to memorialize this discussion into a resolution so there can be no doubt that we're all following the same procedure for electing officers. So I would like to move, or I do move, that any board candidates who are interested in one of the three offices, no, I'm sorry, one of the two offices, president or vice president, communicate that desire to Jenna by the day after Thanksgiving, 11/26. And we can vote on it at the special meeting to be held the following week.
I don't think we
would
need a
also suggest
resolution.
I would also like to suggest that this election be done as a secret ballot, a written ballot.
Can
Under
we do that?
public officers law, I don't think you can do that, Richard.
Oh, you can't? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Vanessa?
I was just going to say, given Kathy's sort of statement of interest, I think it would be unwise to not include secretary this go around. Otherwise, we'll be doing this till my kids are in high
As
school.
long as the secretary candidates realize that Kathy may remain secretary.
Yeah, I don't
That's
think we can
all
do
I'm
that
concerned
until she is awarded something.
I think, we need to give a week prior notice to the trustees of an election. I don't know what other people think. Would it be sufficient if we said, should that position be vacant on that meeting date, then we will also vote for you. So we will have an election for president, we will have an election for vice president, and then should the secretary position be vacant at that time, we will have an election for that one as well. And then we've all had notice, everybody knows what's gonna happen, and we can get it all done in one shot. I think for purposes of notice, it seems to me that would be sufficient.
Would it be acceptable to ask for interest in the secretary position if we were to find ourselves in a situation where there are multiple people who express interest for president? I mean, I think we might be overly optimistic here. If there's no face-off for president, there's not a scenario where she's not vacating the secretary position.
Looks like Phil wants to say something.
Yeah, I don't think it has to be so complicated. I mean, if the position's vacant, then we can nominate from the floor. If everybody knows what's going on, then everybody who's interested in being secretary can raise their hand at that point, should she be appointed to a different position.
Perfect.
I agree.
Yep. We
Okay.
use the same process for the trustee. I'd like to get it all done at the same meeting.
Well, the trustee, you may have more need for time, only because the public, number one, only learned about this tonight for the few, maybe 20
Right.
people that are watching. And that, I think, is going to be a little more lengthy search. You may not
Okay.
have,
Well, I'm gonna ask
plenty
Jenna
days, so to
to
speak.
schedule I'm gonna ask Jenna to schedule a nominating committee meeting as soon as possible. If any of you have suggestions for a potential trustee, I'd appreciate it if you sent an email to the nominating committee.
Marcia, I don't know if you need to do that until we publicize the need for a trustee and see what comes in. I don't know. I mean, you can meet anytime you want, but it seems until you have actual people interested in filling the position, your need to meet,
Well,
it
can be it can be as far out as a week from now. And if there are no nominees for trustee, we can always cancel the meeting.
Okay.
I'm just trying to move this along.
Okay, no problem. Rich?
May I restate my motion? The motion, which I've amended myself and restating, is that any interested candidates for the office of president or vice president notify Jenna by 11/26 of that intent. For secretary, that if the position becomes vacant, that we accept nominations from the floor at the special board meeting for the office of secretary and vote on those that present themselves as candidates.
Okay, any comments on that? I mean, Phil made the comment that he didn't think we need a resolution. We've sort of worked this out amongst ourselves. We need.
From the standpoint of my typing fingers here, is it okay if we put this as Richard moves that any board candidates that are interested in one of the two officer positions communicate that desire by the end of by the day after Thanksgiving, 11/26, and we can vote upon this at a special meeting. Should another position be vacant at that election, we will elect any interested candidate from the floor.
I see secretary in your future, Phil.
That
I do
sounds
not. I can barely read my own hand typing.
It's perfect.
Michael?
Yeah, I just don't really think that it's even necessary. I think we would just say, as a courtesy, we should ask board members to let everyone know by the day after Thanksgiving. But I don't know that we need to have a resolution.
How are they going to let us know?
Email.
We can't do that.
Well, I'm not sure about that. We're not supposed to, people shouldn't be promoting their candidacy, but just the fact that they are, it's just informational to let the board know that their hat is in the ring, so to speak. Does that violate the, I don't see that as a debate or discussion on something.
It absolutely does not.
It is not. It's just an informational item, just like if we were to ask Tim,
But it's not available.
what is it to explain further something that he has on the agenda.
It's not available to the public. Someone is running to be an officer of the board, and that information is not available to the public.
That information can be made available to the public on the 26th or 29th, whatever it was, right after the deadline. Pardon?
The 24th. I mean, it needs to be posted 24 hours before anyway.
So we're talking about a deadline of 11/26 to say your interest, and we're talking about a meeting during the week of November 29th, whenever we can put one together to actually appoint, which means on the day after Thanksgiving, we could post up, these are the people who are interested in these positions. And then on the week of the 29th, we can then have that special meeting and have an election, and that can be posted up publicly more than 24 hours prior to the meeting.
Right, and even, you don't really even need on the 26th to post anything. You have to post what is going to happen at your special meeting, for the public, but it wouldn't have to be a public notice on the 26th. It would be within your meeting notice whenever we schedule the special meeting.
That's fine. So
There's a provision for special meetings in the bylaws. Hang on. Special meetings of the board may be held at the call of the president, or at the request of at least 3 trustees for the transaction of business as stated in the call for the special meeting. Advance notice shall be made as early as possible to each trustee stating the purpose, time, place of such meeting. Public notice shall be provided for these meetings in accordance with New York State open meeting law and as specified in Article 6, 1B.
Mhm.
Article 6.
Right.
1B says special meetings may lawfully convene less than 1 week in advance with less than 72 hours notice, provided that to the extent practicable, public notice will be given as described in Articles 6, 1A. And that's what I just read.
So ideally, if you have a special meeting, you have to post the information to the public 72 hours before, not the information in the packet, just simply that you're going to have a board meeting 72 hours before you're going to have it. That's the right way to do it. It gives that little, get out of jail free card of the, or as practicable, which really doesn't mean anything. You just do the best you can. I think that's more about those emergency board meetings that mean, the boiler broke and we have to all get the board together to, vote on a new boiler right away. So if you know you're going to have your meeting the week after Thanksgiving, just post it 72 hours before and you'll be fine. And the posting requirements of the material at the special meeting, it's already been said, you're just going to put that list out to the public and say, this is what we're voting on. Here's the information.
Yeah, if possible, I'd like to include the name of a trustee or trustees that might be voted on by the board at the same time.
That should be possible if we have everybody just respond to the email saying, I am interested in X position by the Friday after Thanksgiving, then there should be no problem posting
Right.
on that day. We're having a meeting on X day of the following week. This person and this person are interested in the position of president, this person and vice president, and this person and secretary or whatever. And that should be very easy to do with that 72-hour guideline on it. And the email can be as clean and simple as, are you interested in a position? And you reply back with, I am interested in blank.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to point out that the 72-hour public notice that we're talking about, that's separate and different from the 1 week notice to
Right.
trustees of an officer election.
Right.
So we still need to, whenever we get this doodle poll going, which hopefully should be as soon as possible, as soon as the doodle poll is done, we got to make sure we give notice, okay, the board has elected to have this meeting on such and such a date, at least a week in advance of when that date is, so we satisfy that notice. And that's just notice to the trustees of the fact of an election for a position.
Mhm.
Okay. Is everybody clear with that now?
So now
Yes.
you have to decide whether we're going to vote on the motion. I mean, I think we're making it overly complicated, but
Right.
it's going to be a simple, hey, turn it in by this, but I guess we
If
got to make it more
everybody's
complicated, so we got
comfortable,
to do the
I'm happy
resolution
to
or not.
withdraw the motion.
Thank
If
you.
we're comfortable, I'm happy to withdraw the motion.
Okay. Well, thank you. Luann, any second public comment?
No, have not received any more public comment tonight.
Oh, very good. Then I think we are at the stage where we can get a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I have a question. Sorry, I'm sorry. I want to add something for future consideration. And that is to be added to the next regular meeting, some discussion about our process for public comments. I'm really disturbed that we were reading comments that were submitted without name. I think it wasn't explicit before because previously our only method for collecting public comment was in person or email, which sort of presented the name regardless. And now, although I think it's a great gesture to allow the comment box comments to be added to public comment, I think there needs to be something that says if you're having this included for public comment, like you have to include your name. I don't think it's fair to the library and the staff. It makes it really easy for, critical comments to be presented, and we know that the positive ones outweigh those. So I'd like for us to consider that in the future. It might be as simple as just making explicit that a name is required for public comment.
Okay, just for my clarification, as far as I know, the board has resisted, if I'm not mistaken,
That's right.
requiring people to attach a name to their email or their complaint or to have it read publicly. I have been opposed to that because I think if you believe in something, you should stand up for it. But could we maybe have our policy checked? Or Luann, what guidance have you been given by the policy committee?
So again, I just want to say it's really late and I didn't intend to start a new discussion. I'm just putting out the topic as an agenda item for a future meeting.
So I just wanted just to give a little context for this. I wasn't on the board at the time, but having listened to and watched the past board meetings from last year, I know that this specific issue of anonymous comments was discussed extensively at several meetings, and the board declined to prohibit anonymous comments. I'm not saying it can't be revisited, and I'm happy to revisit it if people want to, just to consider it or talk about it. But there was a specific decision made to allow anonymous comments when this came up last year at board meetings.
We had many meetings about this, Vanessa, and a lot of dissension one way or the other. And eventually the board voted not to require people to disclose their names if they choose not to.
Fair, but I just think given our new format for submitting comment, I do think there's a difference between standing up in a meeting and not naming yourself and making your comment and dropping a comment in a box where there's no interaction. And so I'm just requesting that, considering we've expanded our ways of making a public comment, I would like to revisit the conversation.
Okay, thank you, Vanessa. But again, anytime you have a policy, it has to be consistent for all formats. So again, do we have a motion for adjournment?
I
think
will, first of
Peter.
all, say that I think that Vanessa made a great comment, and I look forward to discussing it in another meeting, and I'll make the motion to adjourn.
And I need a second. Marcia, thank you. All those in favor? Aye.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Yes.
Same to you and all. See you later. Bye-bye.